All right, today we're gabbing with Ryan Bailey, host of So Good, So Bad It's Good with Ryan Bailey. So good it's bad, so bad it's
Everybody
good.
does that. Everybody
Ah,
does that.
Ryan's one of the best in the biz, though, you guys, and I'm excited to have him back on the show today. We're going to go through the most shocking Bravo moments of the year as part of our sort of year in review over here. So, Ryan, thanks for coming back. How are you?
We were just talking about before this. I'm stressed, man. I mean, it's not even just holidays and family and friends. It's that nonstop Bravo news is happening. We've never had this many Bravo shows on at once. The
Hmm.
summer really screwed us because we were used to like a really light Bravo schedule, and now it's just not stopping. And then there's horrifying Bravo news that you can't make
Hmm.
real sense of, and then there's the actual good shows on. So I'm at my breaking point, Gibson.
I
I
know.
mean,
I know, and I'm like, beggars can't be choosers because we were all complaining over the summer, but I'm like, all right, maybe just like one less show to
yeah,
watch, or like,
yeah.
because it's like it's not even that, it's the shows, it's the after shows, it's Watch What Happens Live, it's the
Oh, it's the Amazon
everything.
Lives, the Bravo Fan Fest, the
Uh,
BravoCon. If I see one more flashback to BravoCon in Beverly Hills, I'm gonna lose my mind.
you and me both, Ryan. You and me both. All right, so I had sent you a list of the most shocking
Yes.
moments that I could really. I was like, because like for example, nothing on this list is from Orange County, for example, even though that had like a banner year, but like it didn't feel like there was like one shocking moment necessarily to like sum that up. You know what I mean? So I tried to
Well, I,
like,
I think the shocking, just if anything, overall, and it was like in the casting of Alexis, knowing
sure,
that she was dating John Jansen, which
yeah,
kind of then colored the entire season. But
mhm,
yeah, the whole thing was kind of an
yeah,
overall shock.
right. So we began the year with what still could be maybe one of the bigger shockers of the year, which was just the season 4 finale of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Reality Von Tease, Monica Garcia. That was like January 3rd, I think. So like we kicked it off with a bang. And like it's hard because I feel like we become jaded as consumers of Bravo. It's, as we just said, it's always a conveyor belt of like, okay, what else is coming out? But like
Yeah.
that moment obviously was milk, and we have like discussed it ad nauseum, but like it's hard to overstate like how much of a shock and how shook we all were after that finale.
Completely. And also, that just gives credit to everybody working on that show, not just the cast, because the editing, the
Totally.
sound, all of that came together in that episode in such a brilliant way that that's why it still sticks with us almost a year later. And yeah, I love that we have like the timeline screenshots line that literally has become that like earworm of the summer that you're tired of hearing, but at least
Yeah,
Bravo has that
totally.
earworm. But my God, that was shot. And really, in a sense, the shocking thing was when Monica, Reality Von Teese was not coming back. And I think a lot of us thought, well, that show's
Yeah,
done. And then they came back with an even, I would say, stronger overall season with new cast members that have blown us away. So to me, that was a shock as well.
totally. Yeah, I agree. And I agree that it's even a better season. And because it was when that happened, my immediate reaction was like, okay, Monica Garcia will go down as the most impactful one season housewife we've ever had, because it just felt like there was no way for her to come back. But on the other side of the coin, it was like, how do they all come back from this and then follow it up? So um we just began the year in a really with a bang. We really did.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah. I mean, amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Next is Vanderpump Rules. I mean, obviously it's kind of we're kind of two for one here, but like the season finale, which honestly was a semi series finale, at least for the cast that we know of, um, that was a pretty shocking episode of television in and of itself. Correct?
Yeah, I mean the the Lala moment at the
Yeah.
end saying that, Ariana's become God. And now we're hearing more about the making of that moment of Lala saying the producer said, let it rip, let break
Right.
the fourth wall
Right.
entirely, which I like when fourth wall is broken
Me
at this
too.
point because when you're so deep into a season, it's even like Dorit smoking a cigarette on Beverly Hills. Yeah, let's show those moments that we know are happening because everybody else catches them behind the scenes. So to me, that was like, yeah, okay. But what was interesting then of those ripple effects that are still going on to this day between Lala and Ariana, because Lala still seems to be really bothered by Ariana in certain ways, but it was a really interesting and now what seems to be the last full episode with the OG cast.
Completely. Yeah, and they had the montage, and Lala was narrating that montage. It was Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty, and like, I had said for a while that like I feel like if they had started leaning into breaking the fourth wall on this show earlier, it might have been able to have even more legs going forward
Oh,
because that is
big
the
time.
reality of their life. You know what I mean? Of just being these people on TV. So, um, maybe too little, too late. But I actually, if I think in like a year or two's time, like we'll feel like that's maybe a poetic way for this group to have gone out. You know?
It will have been a poetic way. I mean, they had, I think it was season 8. I always bring up that moment of Lisa chastising Jax when he said it was his show. And he was
Yeah.
like, "No, dear boy, we all go through these things." And then they all kind of walked their separate ways. And I thought, oh, that could be a fitting ending. But then they came back with, potentially two of their better seasons ever. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see a year from now, 2 years from now, where these guys all are. And if you just
Mhm.
talk about the men of Vanderpump, if this week says anything, it's not looking good.
No, no, and I had Dylan Hafer from Betches on last week. We did our biggest Bravo winners and losers of the year, and my one of my losers was men of Vanderpump Rules because they're just not set up for success like the women are. You know?
Well, but they don't set themselves up for
Yeah,
success.
of
It's
course, oh,
not,
of
it's
course,
not the
yeah.
show. It's like
No, it's not.
they consistently throw roadblocks in their own way, as a lot of us men do.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what makes them immensely watchable or viewable. And, I could have gone on to watch Tom Sandoval do idiotic or say idiotic things for years to come, but it looks like we'll get those on Instagram lives from here on out.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think he doesn't need a reality TV camera. He can just do it on his phone. So the other Vanderpump Rules shocker is the recasting news, and it was a shocker, but not a surprise. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it wasn't like it came out of left field, but it's just like, whoa, like this is actually happening. Like we're
Yeah.
actually not going to see all these people on Bravo anymore.
Well, it's one of those things where if something something tragic happens in your real life, sometimes if somebody is sick in your life or something, you start to mentally prepare for what could happen. And I mean, I know that's a horrible example, but you had to mentally prepare for Vanderpump at some point not coming back. I mean, this is such a long-running show, and the reality of it, why would any of these people still be friends, especially how they've treated each other season in and season out? And conventional wisdom says you stay away from those people,
Right.
or you try to stay away from those people as you grow older and get wiser. And it would have just been harder and harder, like you said, unless they had broken that fourth wall and it became more of a show about celebrity.
Right, right, which clearly Bravo did not want to do. So we're obviously gonna get this new group. And before we move on to the next moment, Ryan, I'm curious, sort of how much hope you have for a completely new group to deliver on the promise of what we expect from this show.
I mean, listen, I have a fair amount of hope, but like that's what's so great about Bravo having so many shows. Like, of
Yeah,
course they're gonna try it. It's lightning in a bottle. It was lightning in a bottle with that crew of people. You just never know. But I always say, like, are there tons more toxic people in Los Angeles that work at bars? Yeah, there
absolutely.
are. There are.
Yes.
The interesting thing, though, Gibson, I think will be is when 2013, when Vanderpump started, social media wasn't was
Hmm.
what it is today. And now I think you have a lot of people in big cities or even non trying to be influencers. So my worry is like my dream would be that they take all of their social media away for whatever cast and just
Yes.
let
Oh
them
my God.
interact with each other. And we really get to know them without that constant thirst and thriving to build your audience and let real things happen. But yeah, of course, I'm always want to see the Sir Ali in action. If we could have Ken stumble in of like, I can't believe I'm still on a show. I can't believe it. Peter, I will finally get to see Peter
Oh
potentially
my
do
God.
something on this show. So there is excitement and there's a
Yeah,
little bit of sadness, which I know it sounds insane, but we're parasocially in love with
exactly.
these shows.
Exactly. Yep. It's absolutely the end of an era. All right. Next big shocker, Ryan. Maybe we file this under shocker, not surprise, but Dorit and PK's separation announcement that came. It came at this interesting time for Dorit, right? It was like it was after that last season where she had a bad reunion, and it was sort of like, is Dorit like, is she
Yeah.
giving anything to the show? And it came at a convenient time for her. This announcement came, this decision to separate from PK. So, I think the surprise for me was like that they actually did it, because there had always been sort of like questions about their
Yeah.
marriage and relationship, and for them to actually do it, that was the shocker for me, I guess.
Well, the shocker for me, though, is the potentially this decision emboldening her to actually tell Kyle how she feels about her. So,
Sure.
for me, it's not even about the separation because, we have, I'm single PK, I've got new outfits. And it's like, okay,
Yeah,
LOL. We also had that rumor or that story months before they had picked up cameras saying that the producers allegedly sat her down and said, you got to bring it this season. You got to
totally.
be honest. And if that conversation happened or not, it seems to be working because we really are getting an unfiltered Dorit, which I have to say, 4 episodes in, I'm kind of here for that.
Me
And
too.
I'm curious if Kyle's going to have some same sit down conversation with somebody saying, we love you. You are OG. You are, part of the heart and soul of Beverly Hills, but you got to, like the dancing around names and feelings. That's the curiosity I have. But I'm not shocked about PK and Dorit at all because there had been rumors for years. But I mean,
Yeah,
Carlos King, our friend Carlos, he said he had heard this rumor about that this was potentially for show, and
right.
I don't
I
think
don't
that
think
to be
that.
the
Me
case.
neither.
Yeah, I think
No.
two things can be true at once. Obviously, there is a bit of performing and storylines in all of these shows, but I think there are real issues here, and I think we've seen that throughout the years.
Yeah, when I to Carlos actually recently, I was sort of like, I don't believe that this separation is for the show or made up or whatever, but I do think it's interesting that the two biggest things that happened in Dorit's life over the past 3 or 4 years, which is her separation and the home invasion, have both been questioned. The validity and the truthfulness of them both being questioned. Again, I don't think either of them is made up, but it's interesting that people want to think that about her and PK, that they would do that. I'm curious what that tells us about
But
what
but
they've
it tells
shown us
us
over the years.
But yeah, it tells us more about ourselves and what they
Yeah,
primed us to do on these shows because you've had like the Erica Jane, Tom Girardi. You've
yeah,
had all of these things, and sometimes these shows become a contest on who can withhold information on these shows. Like we've seen
right,
Kyle do
totally.
it. We've seen Lisa Vanderpump do it. So it's almost like this. We've got to pull these people out into the light to actually get their real true lives after because they're so used to production.
It's a good
Kyle's
point.
been there from day one. So it's really about finding, and this is why I'm so fascinated with production as I get further into this, because I believe it's this delicate dance of how do you support your cast, your cast member, but also encourage them or almost push them into telling the audience what they know to be true.
And that cast member has to trust that person, and that person's built trust up with Dorit or Kyle or whoever to get them to say that. And it's like that's investment of time, really, in terms of like
Yeah.
creating that space for that to happen. Um, all right, Ryan, next shocker, the Kenya Moore situation that happened on Atlanta. So we don't have to rehash everything, but she basically got
Yeah.
suspended from filming, pulled herself out of it, and I think that the moment in and of itself is shocking, but I also think it's sort of like Atlanta is a pivotal year for the show. It's supposed to be sort of like a refresh and a new era for Atlanta, and then basically the queen bee of the franchise is no longer going to be part of it. But one thing that I think heartens me about the whole situation is that like it seems like, I mean, Andy has a lot of goodwill for her publicly. He's like tagging her on Instagram, and they
Yep.
say they've been in contact. So I kind of have faith that she'll be back into the fold, and maybe they just had to let the temperature down a little bit. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, there's still a bit of a mystery on what
Yeah, a
actually went
lot.
down. So at Bravo Fan Fest, I believe we found out that Kenya's scenes are not going to be cut from what was
Hmm.
already shot. So I was kind of relieved to hear
Me too.
that, which I think it means temperatures have cooled a little bit. Also, I believe Kenya did an interview a couple of weeks ago saying that she would return to Atlanta at some point, which I thought, okay, good. We've worked this out to a point. But I think this is one of those things they've kept kind of like we all have heard speculation about, pictures being shown and something that
Right.
Kenya might have planned to upset a new cast member, which is not unlike Kenya. Kenya has always been, a villain that we grew to love, but she was always making these really big, bold choices, which is what you want sometimes on these reality shows. But yeah, I'm just more heartened the fact that they seem to still have a relationship with Bravo. I
Totally.
was nervous she was going to start signing up with the Reality Reckoning, and that
Me
was going to
too.
go that way. But it's still a bit of a mystery, and I'm excited to see how Atlanta does it. And by the way, it had well, I mean, it brought Phaedra back into the mix then.
It did. It brought Phaedra back into the mix, and I think that honestly, sometimes you need some kind of big incident to get people to watch a show again. And like if they play the cards right here and they edit it correctly and they sort of tease it correctly in a way that's at least a little bit tasteful and not too like whatever, um, it could be a way to get people back into the fold with Atlanta, if they handle it correctly. So I don't know. I think it could ultimately be kind of like a beneficial thing for the show in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, even these biggest shock moments, if you look at them from like a different angle, you can use them. I mean, these shows are
Totally.
built on shock. These are shows. So this might not be the worst thing in the world. I think just from a personal standpoint, we were all kind of like, oh no, not
Yeah.
Kenya. We don't want
Yeah.
Kenya not to be
Exactly.
there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 'cause the first reaction is fuck, like Kenya's done, but she's not done. She's clearly not done.
No, doesn't seem like
Um,
it.
all right, let's move on to the Summer House world. So this past season of Summer House was its biggest season yet, whatever. But I was trying to figure out if like there was one moment from the season that would be like a specific shocker, or if it was just sort of like the idea of watching the Lindsay and Carl stuff unfold and really get the story behind that called off engagement was just kind of shocking all around. What do you think?
Well, for me, there was like four big moments in Summer House, and like one was just purely the idea that we've been talking about fourth wall. When Kyle
Yes.
was speaking with Amanda and Kyle in a bedroom and saying, "I had this conversation with my dad or my stepdad and my mom, and it was about Lindsay and this relationship." And he pointed like he goes, "But we have this. She's gonna see it." And then all of a sudden, we saw that there was three large cameras in the
Yeah,
room, and I thought that was such a really interesting
it
moment
was.
of taking into account that these people do take into account how their message is going to be perceived. The second moment, of course, was picking back up cameras. And,
Yeah,
I still truly believe that Kyle did go in there with this is done, this has to be done, and that the cameras. I mean, I just don't believe that production wasn't open to the ability that that day it
I
was going to
agree.
be done.
I
I
agree
mean,
with you.
no offense to production, this is not a slam on them, but I
Mm-mm.
just don't see you in the season and then you pay $10,000 out of like these things have budgets. You
Yeah, of
you know like
course.
you're not going there just to have some fill-in footage of
Mm-mm.
like
It's
for
not
the wedding
B-roll.
episode.
No, no, this is not
No,
getting ready. Yeah, exactly.
they had a scene with Kyle and Carl right before that. So I think that everybody was open to that possibility of what was going to
I
happen.
agree with you.
And then I mean, the third and fourth are just like, the Kyle Amanda relationship still seems so tenuous, and there's still that thing where and that's why I think Summer House I'm excited to see too of where that Kyle Amanda relationship goes, because every summer there seems to be a moment where you're like, oh, Amanda, what's going on here? Kyle is just pushed to the bringing point, and the Wes Wilson of it all. Wes Wilson came
Yes.
on the scene, and also Jesse Solomon, but Wes with Sierra, and Wes is, from what we see, a bit of a ladies' man, and I think he's going to potentially continue to get himself in trouble. And we really celebrate. We do this with men on these shows. We're like, oh my god, he's the cat's pajamas. We love this guy. What? And then he does something really bad, and then we're like shocked. And it's going to be interesting to see where that picks up for him, because I think if anything, just following his social media, he seems like a social media creature that really seems to enjoy being out there.
Completely agree with you. And because he was obviously very deflated by what happened at the reunion and like the reaction from the fans and stuff. And I'm so curious if that makes him retreat on this season at the beginning. You know what I mean? Especially because he's me living in a house with Sierra, who really shut him down. Or does that
Or
somehow,
he goes harder. I mean,
yeah,
that's the
exactly.
thing.
Or does it embolden him? Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, these shows are all about egos. So sometimes
Yeah.
egos, you can convince yourself you're in the right in a situation that you're in the wrong. And if you're a certain age, you're still not going to potentially learn from something. We also had that rumor that we see the first, or we have the first threesome at the summer house.
Right, right, exactly.
No, and I'm like, well, that's got to be West has got to be involved, right?
Yeah, is
West
it
has
like is
got to
it
be
West
involved.
and Jesse is it another
Oh
woman or is
God!
it one of
If
them and
it's Wes and
two?
Jesse and another woman like that, I mean, we could be talking Emmys for next year. Like that.
Listen, listen. Um, and then the sort of follow-up Summer House bombshell was Lindsay's pregnancy, and now we have baby Gemma out in the world. And it's obviously a big, positive, exciting shocker for her
Yeah,
personally. But I also think
yeah.
if you think about it from the show perspective, it's like what excites me about it from that realm is like it's kind of going to test the limits of Summer House. Like what sort of how can they encompass that into the show? Do they make her basically somebody who we just film with in the city that subsequent
Yeah.
season and like follow that journey, or does she get like a mom's weekend off out in the share house a couple like once a month? Like I'm in that way, it makes me curious to see how they'll handle it for her, you know?
I asked her on this Us Weekly red carpet thing I did. I
Oh,
said,
okay.
"Is there potentially going to be a scene?" Vanderpump Rules. They spent the entire season trying to almost get a conversation between Ariana and Sandoval.
Yes.
That obviously led to that finale. I said, "Is that going to be a similar thing where you are in conversation?" And she said, "Not exact. I mean, she, obviously cagey and dodgy, but I do think that's something that we have to pay attention to in
Yeah.
regards to how Vanderpump Rules ran because we're going to want to see that conversation." I think Carl is probably over the moon for Lindsay and also probably relieved
Yes, I
that
agree.
he, like,
She
oh,
found
good, I don't
happiness
have.
after that. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think there's got to be a little freedom for Carl in that. But God, man, I'm just so dang happy for Lindsay.
Me too.
This is something she's obviously wanted. But you're right. The big thing is going to be see how they incorporate it. Are they going to be able to incorporate it for years to come? Like,
Hmm.
where does this leave Lindsay as somebody that I think is a dynamic character on reality television, but also, just good for her. We know this has been a dream of hers forever, and she got it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm super curious. I'm sure we'll at least get footage at the very end of the season, like kind of flash forward, but the subsequent season, what does it look like? All right. Brittany and Jax's divorce
Oh, are they going
slash
to divorce? Are they splitting up? What happened? Yeah.
slash how good the Valley is. Like to me, I was a hater on the Valley before it even started. I quickly ate my words. Um, and I think part of the appeal of the show, it went from being like, oh, we're watching a spinoff of Jackson, Brittany, and Kristen to like, oh, we're watching a spinoff that's going to lead to Jackson, Brittany's separation. How do we get there? You know what I mean? And so it had this like, it added some oomph to
Arc.
like, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, I mean, and this is like, I'm wrong like 8 out of 10 times. But Gibson, I will say this is one of the only times where I did not hate on the Valley pre thing. I said, let's see it because this is what we do as a Bravo odd, even with the new Vanderpump without the OGs. Everybody's like, who wants to see that? I'm telling you, if you see that first episode, you'll get a feeling immediately. And for the Valley, once I saw that pilot, I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I
Right.
mean, this is good. And then each season, and not just Jackson Brittany, Michelle Lally, Jesse Lally. We had the Jesse Lally ayahuasca moment that Michelle
Uh,
didn't care about. You had Dodie against Janet. You had Janet. There's all of these moments that I
yeah.
can't wait to see where we pick up. But I said 6 months when this was going into production. I said, if Jax Taylor does this, he is legitimately throwing away this family that he says is his lifeblood and his energy source. He is throwing that out the window because reality TV brings out the worst in people, but especially Jax Taylor.
Yeah. It does. And it's just funny because I think that show basically started with him being like, listen, everybody in my life told me don't start a bar if you want to keep your family. And what does he do? He starts a bar. You know what I mean? And
He
it's
literally
like
did everything. Well, it almost makes you think he was trying to lose his
he's a
relationship.
bit of a self-sabotager. You know what I mean? As we've seen over the
Or
years.
he's
And
a
so
brilliant mastermind and he didn't know how to have that
now
hard
Ryan,
talk
let's
with
not go that
Brittany.
far. No, but and I think the next it's great because it gives us this like it sets Brittany up to have this next season where she's like the independent woman and it's her season to really like kind of own the space. You know what I mean? And it's sort of her victory lap a little bit.
Well, and this is my prediction, and I was telling Janet this the other week. I saw her at that Kathy Hilton thing, and I said my prediction is you guys are going to rally around Brittany like no other time before because of the feedback that they also saw Vanderpump Rules get when they didn't think
Right.
Sheena and Lala were rallying
Oh,
around Ariana as
it's a
as
good
as
point.
well. So we'll see what happens, but my prediction it will be that. My thing is, we found out Schwartz will pop in for a couple of episodes because I think my prediction also is that there's going to be a lot of people that won't or don't want to film with Jax. And so they're going to have people like
Uh,
Schwartz.
I
I
haven't thought about it that
know,
way. Yeah.
yeah, no, Jesse will. Jesse's friendly with Jax, and that's going to be interesting. And I'm curious of when him going into the mental health rehab facility, when that happens in the season, and how much time after he gets out we have in the season.
Yeah, I had not thought about the Schwartz edition in that way, where it's like they need Jax to have a sounding board that that will listen.
Yeah, poor
So
Schwartz.
that's
Schwartz is always there
yeah.
for some dude that is like
Listen,
completely messed up, and he's like, "Oh, I guess I can fill this role." And
right.
they
Well, you
live
know
together
what?
now. They live next to each other
Right.
now.
Oh my gosh, Schwartz. And I heard that didn't Jack say that he like basically did it without asking, so he just like sort of moved
Yes,
there.
yeah. Well,
Oh,
the he was on Alex Baskin's Hot Mic podcast, which
right.
I
That's where he
actually
said it.
listened to. I thought it was really good, and
Yeah.
that's another thing. The producer of this has to interview these people, and there was a lot of restraint in that
Yeah.
interview. But he said, "Well, he's like, I did it in there. You know, it was like, oh, you know, it was a really great opportunity. I had to jump on it, and I thought Brittany would be proud of me for doing it." And Brittany was like, "He didn't tell me nothing, and he just made this move." Like it's just wild, and
It
I
is
think he
wild.
knows deep down that that was not probably the right thing to do without consulting the person he has a child with.
Certainly not. But you know what? He does not think before he acts, and we know that. All right, two more shockers, Ryan. One combo of just the Jersey finale that again, kind of like the Vanderpump finale. It's sort of like it might be sort of a quote unquote Sears finale for this cast as we know it. And then also just the fact they did not have a reunion. It's the second Housewives season to not get a reunion. They had that weird
Was
watch.
Roni the first one during the
Yes,
pandemic?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The second Leah
yeah.
season with Ebony. We that weird watch party weird watch party they gave us at Rails, like that was just that didn't really work for me. But I do think that the finale in and of itself, it was built up to be this big shocker, and I actually think it kind of lived up to the hype. That was a pretty wild episode.
Yeah, I mean, with Jersey, it is one of those things that same note gets getting hit again and again and again, and I'm not really enjoying
You're
hearing
done.
the note anymore. I'm not
Got it.
done. Like I'll still watch. I mean, I'll watch these shows
You're
until
over
the
the
I'm.
note.
Oh yeah, but like I'm just like there's got to be other things. There's got to be. We've got to move on from Melissa, Teresa, and Joey. You know, like we've got to move on because I think it's then like taking other characters that I think would be celebrated in other iterations,
Definitely.
but we're so hung up in the lore of Jersey that I don't know. It just for me it fell flat. Even though I loved Margaret's moment of sending the flowers over to Teresa with the lawyer
Hmm.
there, that was his. There, I mean, there were some really great moments. I just feel cohesively, it just didn't. It didn't come
Okay.
together for
Valid.
me,
Yeah.
but like we're there's still so many questions with like Teresa and Louis and Teresa, and I don't think it's one of those things like we talk about people trying to keep things off the show. I think Teresa, just being an OG legend, she's one of those people that like I don't want to share my full relationship. We still are. It's a mystery of that one scene that was in the opening trailer where
Yes.
they had that
Yes.
little fight, Louis and Teresa, with somebody there, and she's like, I don't want to do this right now, not on camera, and that just didn't make the cut
Disappeared.
anywhere. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. That's a good reminder. I completely forgot about that little clip. And like, yeah, I don't sometimes these people get a little too much power, maybe. I don't know what the explanation is for that, but like,
But do you think the Jersey ladies are panicking in any sense of like when are, like, listen, I mean, I don't know. I don't know who relies on this for their bills or
I
their
know. I
yearly
mean,
nut, but
probably. I
at a
probably.
certain point, I mean,
And the
I
and the, and
bet
the
they're
thing is they're
wondering.
all still out and about. They're also doing stuff, but like you can only keep that going, I think, for so long without the show to fall back on and to like have to talk about when you go on around to random events and things.
Well,
Like,
do you ever think about this, Gibson, about like how exhausting it must be to be a housewife in between seasons? Because
yeah,
it's almost like you're on a political campaign. You got to show up
totally.
to every event. You got to get dressed. You got to get glam. You got to be out there. You got to take pictures with the right people. You got to hopefully get those pictures out there just to show people I'm still here. I mean, listen, the podcasting lane is pretty crowded right now,
It is.
and there's only so many ways to get your message out there. And I do wonder. I wish somebody would make a good documentary about what that's like, that period of time
Totally.
waiting to hear. It's like being asked back to SNL. Am I going to be on the cast or not?
That's a good comparison. Like, one of them should have hired their own crew for the past
Oh,
6 months
Gibson,
and
how
just
amazing would that have been? Like,
I
I
would have
hired
loved
my own
that.
crew in the interim
Honestly,
and
that
just
would have been
shows up to
iconic of
a.
one of them. Yeah. Wow. A little too late, but next time a show gets put on
I'm
pause.
sure we'll have another
Exactly.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, Ryan, we're ending on not a fun shocker to talk about, but James Kennedy's arrest was really shocking the other week. And it's not something I really want to like speculate about necessarily,
Yeah.
but like it just you kind of have to mention it because it's this. it was just shocking. It was to wait to see that come in from TMZ.
Yeah, this was, I mean, it's shocking when you first hear about it, and then when you go back
Yeah.
and look at all the
Yeah.
patterns of behavior and things. But
Of course. Of
I
course.
think somebody was angry at me recently because I did an episode about it and I tried to just talk about the facts out
What we
there
know.
and also
Yeah.
point to like, obviously Kristen has always hinted she's going to tell her story when she is ready to tell her story. So you can't tell her story for her except, hey, we have these moments, we have this book, we have what she said here. Jamie Lynn, who used to co-host Shenanigans with Sheena, she had posted a bunch of stories with a lot of detailed information. But once again, that's her story to tell. And people were like, well, you went really hard on Sandoval. It's different, man. If you don't understand the difference between
Yeah.
DV and this a cheating scandal where this guy consistently buried himself on camera, I don't know what to tell you, but I can't. I mean, it's horrible. It's awful. Like I mean, there's obviously an issue. We saw yesterday he was helping Allie move, I don't know,
Stuff
for the
out of the new
time
house.
being.
Right.
Yeah, time being. So we're only getting what we know. He still has not made a direct statement. He's made statement through his lawyer. We see his DJ residencies getting canceled in Vegas. Komodo and Dallas got canceled. He still performed in Milwaukee this weekend. And I was at that Kathy Hilton thing with him last week, and I talked about this. I said, I've seen Mr. Kennedy a lot, so I kind of am not over it, but I was just like, oh yeah, there he is. There's James Kennedy. And he was kind of bouncing around, doing his James Kennedy thing. I was like, oh, that guy's all I could say was like, I didn't see him wasted. I said he looked very up, like, but I just thought, oh, this guy's pounding Red Bulls. I was more excited to talk to the Salt Lake City cast. I was like blown
Right.
away by that. So
Right.
I wasn't paying attention to James Kennedy. He was a little rude to a couple of my friends that night, but I also
Hmm.
chalked that up to that's James Kennedy.
Yeah, exactly. That's not
LOL.
surprising. Yeah.
But I think this is like serious stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no jokes to be made. There's no,
Mm-mm.
I can't even begin. And it's really sad. I think overall, it's just make sure Allie's okay, make sure that. And of course, you can think of like, dude, this guy had the world by the balls. Like, he had built that DJ career up. He had built all of these things up. But I don't want to get too sad for him because really the focus should be for Ali. And it doesn't matter if your show got canceled. It doesn't matter. It doesn't give you an excuse to do anything or even if it's just a insanely loud argument where the neighbor hears, that's scary as well. But we have a direct police report saying the female stated he picked her up and threw her to the ground. Does
Mm-hmm.
not use Allie's name, but it says, I believe, the girlfriend. So you can speculate however you want to, but two and two add up. I just still think that's really scary stuff. And obviously she's in love with him or loves him dearly. I don't know. I mean, what did you think about this?
Yeah, it's the same, a similar reaction, which is like, there have been whispers or things that are slightly louder than whispers, I think, about his behavior in the past, but it still all felt a little bit cryptic and a little bit like nebulous. It was always coming from different sources or like Instagram comments and things. And like you could piece it all together. And I'm sure there are like, I don't really go on Reddit that often, but I'm sure there's like Reddit things that compile it all. But so it always felt like something that like there was never some big article about it. There was never some big thing that like told us
Broke it all
exactly.
down and
Yeah,
said
exactly.
this
And so
is
I think, and sometimes
investigative reporting.
yeah, and sometimes with stuff in the Bravoverse in general, like when I have to like piece together the comments from here and the tweets from there and the replies from here and the Instagram stories from over there, it's hard to get a full picture of what is really happening. And here we have an arrest, and obviously we don't have that many details of it, but like that one thing I'm glad about is that sort of has opened the floodgates to people actually talking about this in a bigger scale because it should be talked about. And now there is like a track record to point to, and something really substantial happened as it relates to those things. And like, the Teddy and Tamra podcasting that they talked about their interaction with them, and like, you know, um,
There have been all of these signs through the years, and I
yes,
was really kind of just thought, and this is weird. This is how our human minds work: is you make excuses for other people, and you're like, well, this guy was deep into alcohol addiction
sure,
or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
whatever was
That plays
happening,
into it as well.
and once Ali put the foot down, he cleaned up. Even though we saw him like chugging THC drinks one
Yeah.
episode, but I thought he was on. I thought he was on a different path, and I thought how this is a great example of somebody, or even like Carl never got this insane, but watching that sobriety journey and how it can really do wonders for somebody. And so I
Totally.
don't think the audience should chastise themselves for like going, oh, he seems to be on a good path, but this
Yeah.
takes away all of that. And I got to say, it's another reminder of why I'm glad Vanderpump Rules with the OGs aren't coming back, because I wouldn't want to sit through a storyline.
Mm-mm.
I would want to talk about DV, and I think we can do that in places. And also, I think this is also just where women need to not come forward with their own experiences, but be able to talk about this from a woman's point of view.
Yeah.
This happens to dudes as well, but it primarily happens to women. And this is something that I think is a stepping stone to really be able to give people the confidence to have in relationships that are potentially really unhealthy.
Completely. Yeah. So I mean,
Happy
I'm
holidays. Happy
yeah, and
holidays,
I'm sure
everybody.
we'll see this
Yeah,
we'll see this
yeah.
continue to play out. I'm sure we'll learn more as it goes on, but it kind of sucks we have to end the year with this, but like this is what happened, you know?
I'm sure something really dumb will happen in this next week that
On
we
the
can
yeah, on
maybe
the
laugh at.
right.
Hope. I mean, if Bravo
Hopefully.
tells us anything, something crazy will happen this week that maybe is silly. But
And
we should be
yeah.
focused on this, you know?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like sort of we're talking about the women like between seasons and waiting to get picked up and things like that. It's like at a certain point, another way to sort of campaign for yourself is to have something crazy happen in your life. You know what I mean? It's like make your not with James and Allie, but like with the Jersey cast, it's sort of like, does somebody want to like do like give
Well, I
us some
mean,
controversy to talk about over
Melissa
Christmas?
just released sprinkle cookies.
There we go.
Melissa Gorga selling sprinkle cookies.
She's playing the
Like that
game.
would have been a hysterical
Totally.
storyline on Jersey to get Teresa's genuine reaction. Like, I can't believe her. I can't believe she did this.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Ryan, that's our
Well,
most shocking moments of
this was way too quick. Are you kidding? I mean, I
well,
was prepared
those
for
are our
three
moments.
hours.
Are there more like does anything else come to your mind? We didn't talk about OC. I guess Alexis kind of in general, and some of those details about Shannon, but that's the I mean,
I mean,
I
that is
like
the
yeah,
I mean, Southern Charm, obviously we're still, we're picking up on this season. And, Shep is another one of those bad boys that we talked about his ayahuasca
I
journey in the
mean,
first
him being
episode.
swindled by the girlfriend, apparently. Have you seen all this about the girlfriend? Like, that's kind of
The
shocking.
Miss Bahamas or Miss,
Uh-huh.
and by the
Uh-huh.
way, when she was on that FaceTime call with him this week, she did not seem that into him. I mean, that's just like a snap judgment. But I was like, that's kind of wild to have the
Yeah.
tables turn, because I'm sure there are so many girls that have pined for Shep over the years that he has not been able to reciprocate in that way. So it'll be interesting to see if that's any sort of lesson for Shep. And I mean, but there's like, Craig Conover stepping in more into his power.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the most shocking of the moment of the year, and I hope Bravo is able to cover this, is whatever's flying around New Jersey with these drones, with these alien drones. Let's get Bravo in on
Listen,
this.
what that could be the kickoff storyline for next season on Jersey. The
Louis, get
person
out
flying
here.
them, the
Louis,
person flying him
Louis,
is
get
new
out
is the
here.
cast member. It probably is Louis. Just kidding.
Oh my God, that would be amazing if that's the season premiere of Jersey, is just the Real Housewives of New Jersey face off
Reacting to
against
the
the alien
drones.
drones. Yeah.
Could you imagine? Wow.
I can't imagine.
Oh my
Yes.
God. Oh my God. Well, I'm sure 2025 will bring on ample more for us. These people can never, they always deliver. They always deliver on the controversy. They always deliver on the shocking moments. And that's what these shows continue on.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
fuel. The fuel of the
Delivering
fire.
too much. Bravo is delivering too much at this point. We've got to get a calendar out and
Let's
space
rein it
this out
back.
so
Yeah.
I'm not as stressed during the holidays. And can we stop having news break right before Thanksgiving with the
I'm with
Vanderpump
you.
Rules news? That to me is like, that's how dare you, Bravo? Shame on you.
Don't put the shadow over our holidays. Come on. Come on. Let us live. Ryan, how often do you put out new episodes of your podcast? Do all the plugs before we
Yeah,
sign
I
off
think
here.
we put out one like every day. We also have like a full Patreon that there's like, I know it's way too much, you guys. So just
Amazing.
pick and choose whatever you like. It's always there. There's interviews, there's silly recaps. I just there's also just pop culture where we talk about things non-Bravo related and other shows. So it's there. If you know, check it out. But like I said, and I Gibson, I was talking to Carlos yesterday. It's like there are only a couple people that I truly like. I won't listen to a lot of podcasts because I think it like
Yeah,
not
me too.
pollutes, but like it.
I'm with you. I don't want to steal people's
I end up
ideas
stealing.
inadvertently.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I end up
exactly.
stealing. And I will say, just from watching everything that you've done this year, I can't wait to see where you go next year.
Oh, thank you.
You give some of the best interviews when I see these clips with the Bravo celebrities and stuff, and I can't wait to see where your show goes and you go because you are one of the voices that I think is much needed, and I'm just really happy to be in a community with people like you that are just crushing it. So thanks for allowing me to be here. I was super excited to be asked back. So thanks, man.
Thank you for the kind words. I feel the same way about you, and it's also nice to be part of this group that we all support each other, and like it's not competitive, and that's also I really like about it. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
really
we're
do.
just talking about these shows. There's no reason to compete with each other. Everybody has
Completely,
their own voice, their own
completely.
take, and they have their own way about it. And that's what I think is that it celebrates all of these different voices, and that's what it should continue to do. We're really lucky to have this lane.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. Well, Ryan, happy holidays, happy
Happy
New
holidays.
Year. I'll be on your show in
Yeah,
2025 in
Gibson will be on my
January.
show in the beginning of 2025. So tune in for that episode at least.
Yes, 100%. All right, Ryan, thank you so much. Talk
Thanks,
soon.
man.
I want to gab.